Steins Gate is a very interesting game. It's already a visual novel, which is already a pretty niche genre. But after playing it, I realized it's one of the best stories I've actually ever heard in a video game, and I want to recommend that to anyone who would think of picking it up. If you came to this video looking for a review, this is honestly more of my personal experience, and since it's a visual novel, I'm going to be talking about a lot of spoilers. So if you want to play the game, I don't want to leave you hanging dry. I will say that I 100% recommend you play this game. But if you're new to the genre, I would say it's not the best place to start. I think there are a lot better games out there that do a better job of transitioning you into the visual novel genre by also offering other forms of gameplay. Franchises like Danganronpa and Ace Attorney, I think, do a much better job of introducing a player who hasn't traditionally played visual novels into the genre, since there are a lot more interactive points with the player, where Steins Gate is almost all reading. Unless you're super fine with just reading, I would recommend these series over it to begin with. However, once you get a feel for the genre, and more importantly, if you enjoy it, I would 100% recommend trying this game out. And hey, if you did play the game, or if you somehow took my recommendation and played the game, I hope you liked it, because now I want to start talking about my experience with the game and what I felt about it. So, without further ado, let's get started. So Steins Gate is a roller coaster of a game, and the fact that it even made me want to make this video is enough, because I just want to talk about it. You know, it was really enjoyable for me, and it's such an interesting story. I know I'm using the word interesting a lot, but I can't think of another word to describe it. But before I get into anything, I did play it on my Nintendo Switch. It is on the eShop. If you guys want to play it, it's really convenient, actually. Again, this is Steins Gate Elite, so it's not the original version. I know a lot of people prefer the original art. However, I personally was okay with the anime cutscenes being in it. But the original, I believe, is on Steam as well, so whichever way is easier to play it. I'm just happy there are more ways to play it. I'm so annoyed because I'm pretty sure there's a physical version of this game, and I'm more of a physical buyer myself. So buying the digital version and knowing how much I enjoyed it, I just wish I had a box. I might just buy the game now, honestly, physically, because the game earned it, you know what I mean? I usually buy it physically because I like having the box to look at. However, I was impatient. I just wanted a visual novel to play, and I heard how good Steins Gate was, so I just bought it digitally. But man, the physical copy looks good. There's also a special edition too. Special editions were tough. I wasn't really interested in that one because it's like, the art looks really cool. I'm more interested in just getting the box because I feel like special editions are kind of overpriced in general. But the fact that it got a lot of attention is really nice. I actually don't know much about the Steins Gate community outside of the game, but I mean, there's a sequel too. So I feel like this is a good beginning to getting to know more about the series. I don't think I'll go and watch the anime, considering it just, I mean, I played the game already. I don't know if I need to see the anime. I'm more happy it just apparently did a good job at explaining the game. Danganronpa's anime was too short for like a 25-hour game and had 12 episodes, but apparently Steins Gate had like 24. So I think that's a good amount to really tell the story in 30-minute intervals rather than what the game is, which is like 30-something hours. Speaking of which, let's actually get into the game now. I want to get the bad things out of the way first, just because overall I really enjoyed this game, but I still think it's good to talk about the cons first before we get into the pros. The first thing is the elephant in the room. The game starting out is really slow and boring, and I hate saying that because I feel like the opening also does a lot of good for the game, which I'll get into a little later, but oh my goodness, just first playing the game, so boring, and it just drags on, and it's wow. I didn't want to say that in the beginning, like to drive newer players away if that was the case, because I really do think in the end the slow start actually works to its advantage. But man, it's like, it's so hard to hook the player in the beginning, especially when you have Okabe, who's a really eccentric character. If you guys have played Fire Emblem Awakening, he's kind of like Owain, where it's just like he says like these crazy things, and it's just no one knows what they're talking about. I'm personally not a huge fan of that archetype, but with Owain and Awakening, at least it's like he was a side character, where Okabe is the center of attention. So like everywhere you go, you're being subjected to this personality, whether you like it or not. And if you don't like that personality, you know? So yeah, that was a hurdle. It was definitely a hurdle. And just like, oh man, I feel like in chapter 2 specifically, there's the scene where Kurisu is having the interview or whatever, or the presentation, and she's explaining the types of time travel with Okabe, and it just drags on. And I know it's to set up like how time travel will work later in the game, but it's like, man, oh man, it's tough. It's really tough. I don't want to dwell on that too long, but man, it's really hard to hook a player into the game when they don't have any attachment to the characters yet. So you're just trudging them through with these characters they don't know and won't care about yet, and in ways sort of unlikable too, because Daru could say some pretty creepy stuff, and Okabe is just super eccentric. So it's like, yeah, those aren't the most popular character archetypes, if you could even call them archetypes. I'm probably missing a better word for them. But yeah, I feel like that's definitely the biggest flaw this game has. I understand this is a way to introduce the characters to the player, for you to like actually understand who's who and set up, you know, context so that you care for the characters later on, and I think it works. It definitely works. But I just wish it was a little more interesting. But after chapter 4, I really think the story just picks up exponentially. When Mayuri dies at the end of chapter 5, it's like the story just like that roller coaster. It goes right down the hill, you know, it just takes off, and it's just so investing. And it bothers me so much that I'm bothered by the introduction of the game and how bored I was, because without those scenes, I wouldn't care as much as I did about these characters. And man, I really cared about these characters by the end of the game. In fact, it's so funny, because I played this game like the way it like is presented to the player. It took me months to get through the first 5 chapters, like months. And the second half of the game, like in a week, just done in a week. And it feels like it's taking place over months, even though it's a few weeks, I know. The first 4 chapters, like, because the characters are slowly but surely growing to like each other. And by the second half of the game, it just feels like it just flies by. And that's how it felt for me. So in a way, it's kind of like I was there. You know. But let's talk about those characters though, because that's probably my favorite part about this game. Again, like I said with Okabe, in the beginning he's kind of hard to get behind unless you like the archetype of characters that really are eccentric and in your face. It's tough to kind of get a feel for him. I can appreciate that the game took a chance on a character who already had an established personality. I think if you take a main character and make them like a silent protagonist to mirror the player, it really limits you on how you could write a story. So regardless of how Okabe acts, I think the fact that he already has like an established personality, regardless of what it is already good. And the growth he goes through the game, man. Oh man. Like, it makes you happy to see him talking all crazy by the end of the game again. The character development is so good. And again, by the end of the game, he's back to his old self, so it's not too long where he's in that phase of just being depressed. And that depression is earned because of how much he's been through. You know, it doesn't feel like a character's just going through like an emo phase for the sake of having a character in an emo phase, because all of it is justified, and by the end of it, he goes back to his old character of being eccentric and doing all of his poses, but he doesn't lose the lessons he learned throughout the middle of the game. And I think that's what you need. You know, that's what you need. You don't need a character to be drastically different by the end of the game. They could stay and have their same personality because that's who they are, as long as they retain the lessons they learned and integrate that into their already established character. It's beautiful. So yeah, Okabe was a lot of fun. Okabe was, you know, he grew on me. It was really great. Besides Okabe, I think a lot of the characters had a decent amount of screen time. Obviously, a lot of focus is faced on Mayuri and Kurisu, but other characters like Daru, Luca, Faris, Mocha? It's Mocha? Because I don't want to say Mocha, because I feel like I'm just talking about coffee, but I think it's Mocha? Please don't hate me if I say it. I'm just going to say Mocha then, because it's easier. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. I feel like they all got a good amount of attention. I think out of all of them, Faris and Luca probably got the least amount of screen time, but they still get their own dedicated chapters, so at least they get attention. And even when Mocha doesn't have her own ending, even though I feel like she should have, they still give her another chapter dedicated to her, so that's really good. And also, she's the one, like, who Okabe is going against the whole game, so I think they're all pretty balanced. At times it would also feel like Daru is kind of just not there, but at least he gets the scene with Souza, where she finds out he's her dad. That was really heartwarming, and I think it gives him a really good storyline. But I think the best handling of these characters have to be in their specific endings, more specifically Luca, Souza, and Faris. Now again, Luca and Faris weren't really developed a lot in the game. They didn't get a whole lot of screen time, so when they were having their own plot lines, it was more dedicated to just their one issue they were dealing with. You know, Luca would want to be a girl, and Faris wanted to see her dad, and I think those chapters dedicated to him do a really good job of giving them closure. As unrealistic as I would see Okabe ending up with Faris and Luca, at least they treated the endings differently. When I first played the game, I was really afraid that the multiple endings were gonna just be like the same answer. Like Okabe was just gonna be like, oh, I like this character better than Mayuri. Because that's not believable. I don't believe that Okabe would choose anyone over Mayuri unless it was Kurisu, which, you know, is a discussion for the end of the game. But in terms of each character's ending, they actually justify it in different ways, and I love that. If you guys have played Virtue's Last Reward, which is the second game in the Zero Escape series, if you haven't, go play that. It's freaking great. It's a really good example, at least in my opinion, a way to not handle this situation correctly. In that game, you also get a choice between like a yes or no question. I'm not going to spoil anything, don't worry. You guys still gotta go play it, though, if you haven't. But if you choose the option the game isn't really pushing you towards, the character will have an excuse as, oh, I don't know what was going on, man, why would I choose this? And yes, that game has its own explanation for why that was the case, but I feel like the player is the one making this decision, so I feel it's better for the game to try to justify that choice regardless of its morals, because you never know the player's reasoning. They could believe that the choice the game doesn't really want you to choose is the right choice to them. And that's why I think this game handles endings so well, because every instance with the characters that are a little less believable for Okabe to choose over Mayuri, there's still some kind of justification for it, and I love that so much. With Souza, Okabe realizes that no matter where he goes, Souza and Mayuri are gonna die, regardless of which path he chooses, so he tries to think of a way to do it while repeating those 2 days, and it gets dark. It gets really dark. But yeah, it makes sense. Okabe is also really good friends with Souza, so why would he want either of them to die? Eventually he just gets lost and won't find a solution, so he just forgets the whole reason he's repeating these 2 days. By creating this Groundhog Day-esque storyline, the player gets to see a situation that would seem pretty common in a time travel plot. And while yes, Okabe is kind of doing a Groundhog Day thing by repeating those few days before Mayuri's murder, he's changing it up slightly by undoing certain actions. With Souza, he's not really changing any of the situations. He's just getting lost in the same routine. And by Souza giving him out in terms of going to the future with her. Yeah, it's a really interesting ending. And as much as I would have liked to see what would happen, I feel like they would just forget because the time machine isn't fully completed. You know, I don't think it would have ended very well. But it's a really interesting ending, and I feel like besides the true ending, it's the second best at least. Ferris's is kind of similar to Mocha, where Okabe has to make a decision of not killing her father or Mayuri. That was a freaking cute chapter, by the way. That was so cute. Him saving her. Love that chapter. And it was kind of short, so like they didn't stretch themselves out. They just told the story they needed to tell. Off you go. But the ending is also pretty different because it's a completely different world line, I believe. Like, no one remembers him. So I don't feel like it would be the beta or the alpha world line, which was super unique, and I feel like none of the other endings or the story itself even acknowledge that idea until the very end. As much as I just don't buy Okabe being with Ferris, I think having an ending where neither of them die and Okabe kind of just accepts the fact that in a way he did achieve his goal by having no one die, but now he's in a future where no one knows him. It gives you that weird feeling that a lot of these endings give you. And again, similar to Souza, he chooses this path because he wants to save as many people as possible. Again, justifying why the player wouldn't want to send the D-mail, other than just being like, I can't do this to Ferris. I can't. Luca's ending I feel like is the most interesting though, because he's just burnt out Okabe. They take into account that this is the third D-mail he's undoing, so it's obviously wearing on him a lot. Personally, I feel like he would just be like, I already screwed up 2 people's D-mails, I might as well just do a third. But having the continuity be there, that since this is the third D-mail he's undoing, and yes, the guilt has to be wearing on him, and having it boil over to the point where he's just like, I'm done. I can't ruin anyone else's life. It's a really clever way to just further an ending. Granted, Luca's ending I feel like might be the worst, because even though the pictures are cute, he's kind of just like, look at these pictures, my boy. They're so cute. And then it just ends, and it's like, I get it, but it's just like, damn. It's really hard seeing Okabe just see Mayuri die and being like, my boy, I can't do anything about this. It's a little, I feel like sort of out of character in a way that he just gave up. But again, it brings into account the fact that Okabe is probably worn out from all these time leapings and feels guilty for changing all those D-mails in the first place. So in the end, I'm really happy with all these endings. They take all these different scenarios, and it's not just the same copy-paste of, oh, I just can't do this. They actually give a reason for why he feels like he can't do this, and it's just so great. When I first played the game, I didn't know that you had to have the little text things. I didn't know they meant anything. I thought it was just a little way to break up the visual novel aspect in the smallest way possible, but it actually gives you the true ending by making the correct choices. Yes, I used a guide, because how could you not use a guide? It was really interesting though, because looking back, it's kind of like you're playing Steins Gate on your own, because you're making the correct decisions that change the world line by itself. So it's like, hey, you're affecting the game player. You have reading Steiner. So yeah, I thought you'd just go to the true ending by yourself, and then the credits rolled, and I was like, wait, what? And I got Mayuri's ending. And Mayuri's ending, man, oh man, I did not need to feel that sad. I didn't need to. All of these endings, man, these just, oh, they hit you like a truck. I feel so empty at all these endings that aren't the true one, because it's like, something's missing, you know? It's either in Ferris's ending where no one knows Okabe, Luca's ending where Mayuri's just dead, or Souza's ending where he just leaves. And it's like, like, I know it's not the canon ending, but since there are different world lines, I guess in a way they are, and since the sequel is kind of an alternate universe, I guess they are endings, canon, like, I don't know. It took me for a ride, this game, for sure. It's such a difference from the beginning of the game, where they're just sitting, eating some freaking bananas and chicken. And then at the end of the game, it's just like, guess someone's gonna die. And wow, what a change in tone. Something I do want to address with these endings though, and this is like the only other negative I have with this game, it's that the music, before you do anything, I'm not saying the music's bad. I like the music. I think it could have been a little better. A lot of these songs don't really stand out to me as much. Besides Believe Me, that's a really pretty song. Beautiful song. I love that song. I just think it's overplayed. Every ending and every sad moment, which is a lot by the end of the game because, you know, it's a lot more emotional. It feels like they're always playing Believe Me. And again, beautiful song. It enhances every scene it's in, but it's in a lot of scenes, and the last thing I want from that song is for it to overstay its welcome. It got to the point where it just started to feel like background music, like Laboratory. That's a good song too. The songs are good. But man, I really think this game could have benefited from just a few more tracks, especially a few more that had a more emotional tone to them, like Believe Me or Solitude does. Because I feel like there are so many scenes that need the song like Believe Me to enhance the emotion behind a scene, because a lot of the scenes are just so emotional. Every ending, for example. Or in the later half of the game where Okabe's having those serious talks with Kurisu and all those cute little things happen. Believe Me is always playing. And again, I love that song. The piano just makes it so just bare. You know, the scene, just nothing else matters but what's happening right in this scene. And I think the fact that it's just a piano playing the main theme just puts all the focus onto the event happening and cancels out like everything around it, because the thing that's happening in your face, the conversation that's happening, the emotion that's happening is all that matters. And I think that song brings it out so well. But man, they just use it too much. I think just a few more songs that had a similar tone to Believe Me could have really worked. And it's a shame because Spike Chunsoft has shown that they could do that with Virtue's Last Reward. I'm going back to it. I told you, my boys, it's a good game. Go play it, but play the 999 first if you haven't. There's a bunch of songs in that game that relay emotion in different ways. You have Morphinogenic Sorrow, which is the main theme, and it's great. You have Bluebird's Lament, which is a totally different song, but still has the same just sorrowful emotion and innocence to it, along with other songs that just bring out emotion in different ways. And I feel like Steins Gate really could have benefited from that because, like Virtue's Last Reward, there are multiple endings, and there are a lot of scenes where the emotion is important. And I think putting all of that on one song hurts the game just a little bit. But again, in a few years, when I just forget about all the scenes it played, or heck, in a few days, I'm not gonna forget in a few days, but like when I'm not used to hearing the song and I go back and hear it, I'm still gonna love it. I just think the game could have benefited from a few more like it. You know what I mean? I'm really surprised Mocha didn't get an ending, because she had a really big part in this game, and I guess you could say Chapter 9 is kind of like an ending to her, since she doesn't die. I mean, she does die. That's not funny. Why am I laughing? But I guess, admittedly, that wouldn't flow too well with the story, and she did get a good amount of attention. I think Chapter 9 is probably my favorite chapter in the game, because I was just on the edge of my seat when he's going into her apartment and he needs to go and get her phone, and I'm like, she's gonna kill you, because you've seen what she could do in the past chapters, like with Mayuri. And it was just, oh, I love that chapter so much. And finding out Mr. Braun, the buff dude downstairs, is FB, it feels dumb in a way, because the game, it's like, of course, you know, how many characters did they introduce? One of them has to be the big baddie. But man, it still was just like, oh, it's such a good scene. It's so like tense. And then, oh my god, Nay? when Nei stabs Mocha, it's like, you know, I played this at like 1 a.m. And then after the chapter, I went to bed, and I was like, yeah, let me turn my lamp on, because it was just so creepy seeing Nei stand there with a knife and then run away in a straight line doing like the Naruto run. Dude, it was creepy. I'm actually surprised they didn't do more with the Nei thing. Like, of course there is that, this scene where if you don't send the D-mail, you have that cutscene where Nei tells you what she does in the future, and it's extremely gruesome, so I guess that's kind of the way of showing you what would have happened. But man, ooh, it was so chilling, that scene. It was like the ending of chapter 9. Oh, the ending of chapter 9, I forgot about that, where Okabe realizes that Kirisu will die when he goes back to the Beta World line, and it's like, wow. What a masterful chapter. I love that chapter so much. And I remember at the time playing chapter 10 just being like, man, Okabe is just wallowing in sorrow when the answer's obvious. Because it's like, okay, Mayuri or Kirisu will die. But Mayuri also has the future of the world being dictated by CERN weighing it down. So it's like, I feel like that would be more important. Plus, you just spent like 4 or 5 chapters changing the world line, so it's like you're just gonna be like, oh, Kirisu's cute though. So I was just like, yeah, I feel like it's not really a tough decision. That was my first playthrough when I got the Mayuri ending, so I didn't see any of the scenes with Kirisu in it. But I was like, yeah, this answer's obvious. And then the Mayuri ending happened, and I was like, oh wait, what? Hold on, how do I get to the true ending? Oh, and man, Mayuri's ending, oh my, like, I just feel like a jerk. I feel like the biggest jerk, because Mayuri's like, I don't want Kirisu to die. And Okabe's just like, that's the game. I'm so just spit. And Kirisu just leaves, and I'm like, Mayuri must feel like garbage right now. Just like complete garbage. Luckily, I guess with the ending, she forgot, like, what led to that when, you know, he jumps back to the Beta World line. But, like, man, that scene at the train station with Mayuri and her ending, it's just like, I feel so terrible. It's, ooh. That was, like, the most empty I felt during this game, because it was just like, feels wrong. This should feel right, but it feels wrong. After Mayuri's ending, I went back and did Kirisu's ending. I went back, like, to chapter 4, because you gotta do those D-mails. Kirisu's ending and the true ending are kind of the same thing, except they cut you off before the credits, so if you just save at chapter 10, I guess you should be fine. Because I don't know if you complete the true ending, the game will give you Kirisu's ending anyway. I'm not sure if they do. Let me know if you want, I guess. But all those scenes you get, with Kirisu and Okabe in between, are just so adorable. And the relationship building between them is just so natural. And it's just so, it's so cute, man. It's like, it grows so naturally, and they just click so well. Like Kirisu's defrosting Ice Queen persona being like kind of similar to Okabe, where she's kind of into all those nerdy stuff he's into. It's so sweet. And when he promises to see her father with her, and how that builds over the game from the D-mails you send that unlock the flags to get the true ending. By the time you get back to chapter 10, where he has to decide between Mayuri and Kirisu, I understood a lot more why it was such a tough decision for him. And that's where it kind of clicked for me, because Mayuri and Okabe's relationship never seemed one of like dating, but more of like a family thing where they want to protect each other. With Kirisu, Okabe genuinely loves her. And it's so beautiful, because yeah, how do you decide between those two people? And I know I said with Souza's feud, you know, the doomed future with CERN, he's only 18 years old, and even then it's like you wouldn't be focusing on that, because your immediate thoughts would be on the two people who you've spent so much time with, growing bonds with. Those are who are important to you right now. You're not thinking about the future, you're thinking about what's important to you. And it just made so much more sense then to me. And it's just tough. Like, I got it. I understood it. Because, like, with Mayuri, it's like, yeah, you can't kill someone who's basically been your family. But with Kirisu, it's like, he wants a future with her. And without her, what kind of future would that be for him? So I understood it. Wow. It made the chapter so much better for me. And when that leads into the ending, the grand finale. Whew. Oh, man. They fake you out twice with credits. They fake you out twice. After Kirisu's ending, you get the phone call from Souza. And then, like, in the middle of that chapter, there's credits again. And I was just like... You know, after you change the future for the last time, I was just, like, freaking out. I'm like, this can't be the end. You know, I'm thinking back to other Spike Chunsoft games. I'm not going to spoil it, but, like, that leave you on a cliffhanger. And I'm like, no, please don't. Like, do not do this to me. I need to know. The ending wraps it up really well. But before we get into, like, the very ending, I love the Phoenix Wright joke, where he's looking for a weapon to fight Nakabachi with, and the Thinker statue falls. I was like, I didn't even notice the glow stick. I was like, he's going to use the freaking Thinker statue. And then he was like, oh, a glow stick. I'm like, oh, my God, come on, that was perfect. That was perfect. I loved that. Some parts I didn't really understand with this chapter was when after Okabe kills Kirisu, when he goes back the first time, I was like screaming at that, but I was like, no, this can't happen. I was like, I didn't get why the second time he went back, he wouldn't see himself when he went back the first time. And they kind of like give a throwaway line where it's just like, oh, it's a minute different world line or something. I guess it's like is that like a multiple different world line thing? I didn't understand that as much. I didn't get why he wouldn't see himself from the time when he traveled back the first time. It's probably world line stuff I didn't quite get, because again, like in chapter 2, they do kind of get in there with all the difference like the speeches that just kind of eventually, you know, so maybe I missed something there. And another thing was like with the second time where he tricks that world line self into thinking Kirisu's dead when she's just stunned. Wouldn't she die anyway? Because wasn't she dead in that timeline where Okabe sent the very first email that changed it? Like, I don't get that. And also, wouldn't Okabe just change the timeline again because he sent that email right after seeing her dead for the second time around? Like, I mean, it's so hard to explain. So I feel like even though he tricked that world line's Okabe into thinking Kirisu was dead, I thought she died in that world line in the first place. So wouldn't she have died even after she was just stunned? Because that's what the world line was determined to happen anyway? Because when he tried to change the way Mayuri died in the other world lines, she would just have another way of dying, whether it was just like collapsing or going in front of a train. Wouldn't Kirisu like just die right there because that was the world lines that was set in that world line already to happen? It was just a little confusing things that maybe it's a plot hole, maybe I'm missing something, but it's just a little confusing to me. But besides that, the world, man, I mean, it made sense too. Like, there can't just be two world lines, you know, Alpha and Beta. You know, there has to be another one. And I really like that the way it was figured out was with Okabe talking to his past self, and he's doing all, you know, the things like learn from your mistakes. And it was so empowering to see Okabe back in his, like, I keep using the word eccentric, but I think it's the best way to describe it. Like, eccentric self, doing the poses again and doing his laugh. I'm not gonna do it. I will not do it. It was nice to see, because you just went through so many chapters of him just completely, like, just stressed out of his mind. It was nice. It was a really good ending, and, you know, they still have their memories from different world lines, so even after he saves the day, you know, you see that Kirisu at the very, very end of the game sees that she remembers, you know, being called Christina, and, you know, like, all the characters are in one place, and it's great, and I really wish the sequel focused on, like, a future where, like, they're older, and I don't know, I wish the sequel wasn't just an alternate timeline, Because, man, I really would like to see more of what happened after the ending. Like, to just see them, like, grow up and become, like famous scientists together. Like, that whole lab group together, all 8 members. I think it's 8, right? Yeah. I would like to see that. So after finishing that game for the first time, I found myself very, like, oh, so sad. And looking back, like, a day later, I see myself missing the characters a lot more, which was so interesting to me, because there are so many crazy things that happen. It's a time-traveling game where changing the past is, like, such an interesting topic, but I still find myself just missing the characters themselves more. And I feel like it has to do with the beginning of the game, which is what I first complained about, and I'm going to end this video with because I think it serves its purpose so subliminally. So for a first player, you don't know these characters, it's pretty boring, nothing really exciting happens. But once you get to the end of the game, and you see everything these characters go through, and you see how they end up, and you see how they're all affected by the D-mails, and by time travel, and by Okabe interacting with them and changing the future, I feel like you just wouldn't care for these characters if the game didn't spend these 4 or 5 chapters building up how they act, what they do, what makes them tick. Because at the end of the game, when Okabe's walking and giving everyone their pins, I was just sitting there with a big smile on my face, because I was like, it's been a good time, guys. I'm gonna miss you all so much. Because you feel like you're growing with the characters. By being in all those, just like, those slice of life scenes, just sitting in Okabe's lab, where they're just sitting drinking soda, just laughing, doing like these weird antics. You feel like you're hanging out with them, as cheesy as that sounds. So like when something bad happens to them, you're like, oh nah, this is my boy right here, I can't let them be hurt. And it's just those beginning chapters, man. It's something that you would think is the game's biggest weakness is also the biggest strength, because you feel such a connection to these characters by the time the game ends, because they set them up so much in the first 4 chapters. I really can't think of another way you can have the effect that the later chapters have on the player than by putting all of the characters early game in these very down-to-earth, natural situations, because they don't feel like characters like in something like a Danganronpa, where everybody is just one personality trait. And that's not a knock against Danganronpa. I love that series. But in Steins Gate, they don't feel like characters. They feel like people. And I think that's what ties this game all together. Regardless of what happens in this game, with time travel, with all of these like supernatural occurrences, there's still just 4 friends sitting in a lab together in just some apartment building after they come back from school. Like, it's such a normal situation that just so happens to have some abnormal occurrences happening in it. And that's why you care about these characters so much, and the story as a result, because like you feel like you know people like Daru, like Kirisu, like Okabe. You know, you could relate to them, you could connect to them, and when you see them in situations where they're struggling, you want to get in there and help them and see them succeed and see how their stories end, and why when situations occur where one of them has to die, it rips your heart out, because these are just everyday people, and this game makes them out to be everyday people so well by those first 4 chapters. And it's just, wow, what a story. I love Steins Gate so much, and I'm gonna miss it. Like right now, it's nighttime, I would usually be playing the game, and it's like I'm just sitting here playing, and any other game, it's just another game. I don't think I'll ever find another visual novel quite like Steins Gate, or another game that could make me connect to the characters so much like it is with Steins Gate. And I think that's the magic of visual novels. Or just go read a book. Just go get a book. It's not a video game. I feel like that's wrong, because being able to see the characters emote, being able to see the setting around them, seeing them interact with the setting, it's something you just can't really get in a book. And with other genres of video games where you have to, control a character in it, it becomes a little too immersive, where it feels like you're affecting the story a little too much, even if the story may be linear. You're just being taken on a journey. You don't have that much input into it. This is something the developers made to tell you. They had all control of the story, and it's just something you have to experience. And while it has its own disadvantages, because, like books, once you read it and finish it, you don't really get much after going back to it. But man, that first playthrough, it's really something else. And I'm just like, I'm gonna miss this one for sure. And it inspired me to make this video. I loved this game so much. I can't say it enough. And if for some reason you still haven't played this game, you didn't listen to my intro, and I didn't spoil it terribly for you, just please give it a chance. I promise it'll be worth your time. It's definitely one of my favorite games I've ever played. But I'm gonna stop because I'm just gonna get into rambling territory. How did you guys like this game? Because I know there are a bunch of you out there who have either watched the anime or have played this game yourself. I want to hear your experiences with it. I would love to start talking more to people about this, and I'm happy I was able to make a video, because this is my first video, and I'm a little new to it, so it's has its own nerves, but I'm really just happy I got to talk about it. It's really fun to do, and I would love to just do more games like this. I don't want to just stick to visual novels. I've played a lot of visual novels for sure. The Danganronpa trilogy, the Ace Attorney trilogy, and Zero Escape trilogy, and obviously Doki Doki Literature Club, and now Steins Gate. So while I'll probably play Steins Gate 0, I believe is the sequel eventually, man, I don't know what other visual novels to play. Like, I know there's a lot more Ace Attorney games, and I'm like, I kind of took a break from Ultra Despair Girls with Danganronpa. I have no clue what my next type of visual novel will be. So if you guys have a suggestion for that, that'd be cool. But I really hope you guys did enjoy the video. I'm probably gonna do a lot more of these like experience videos, because in the end, I feel like there are just so many video game videos out there, and I just want to talk about my experience, because that's like the only thing personal with these things, just talking about your experience and talking about the game on your way. I guess you can kind of call this a big critical analysis and review, but I feel like there are a lot of other videos that go more in depth. So this is kind of just an in the middle of a my thoughts and a review. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I don't know what game I'll do next. Well, it'll just be some game I want to talk about. So if you guys want to hear me talk about other games, stay tuned, and I'll catch you guys later. Hope you have a great night, and I hope whatever video games you're playing right now, they're bringing you as much joy as Steins Gate did for me.